Good afternoon and welcome to NASA's Johnson Space Center. I'm Reagan Sharfetter, today joined here by NASA's SpaceX Crew-10 crew members who just recently returned home after a 146-day mission to the International Space Station. To my left, we have Commander Anne McClain, pilot Nichole Ayers, and JAXA astronaut and mission specialist Takuya Onishi. Roscosmos cosmonaut and mission specialist Kirill Peskov will not be joining us here today as he has since returned back home to Russia, but rest assured our other crew members will be able to answer any questions we have here today. I know we're all eager to get started, so before we hop into our Q&A, I'll go ahead and pass it over to our commander for some opening remarks.
Hey, good afternoon. On behalf of Crew-10 and by extension Expedition 73 aboard the International Space Station, we appreciate you all being here. We're excited to talk to you and answer some questions. Just to give you a kind of a quick overview of our mission, we launched in mid-March aboard the SpaceX Dragon Endurance to the International Space Station. We had just over 24 hours of what we call phasing. So the trip up in the car was the road trip was about 28 hours. And then we got to the space station where Crew-9 was on board just for a few days after we got there. And then we were, shortly after that, we had a Cygnus cargo departure. We had a Soyuz arrival. We had a Soyuz departure. We had a spacewalk. We had another SpaceX Dragon cargo vehicle. And then this summer, we had a private astronaut mission. Actually, it was just 3 or 4 weeks ago, which is crazy to think about, that it ended. And then we just came back and did the first Pacific Coast landing for a NASA crew. So I know that my crewmates and I are excited to talk to you about any of that. And I want to highlight that I was the commander of Crew-10. Takuya Onishi from JAXA was our commander for the 146 days that we were up on space station, or maybe just under that when he assumed command. So he was the space station commander while we were there. And so I'm sure he'd love to take your questions about that as well.
All right, thank you so much. And we'll go ahead and open up the room for questions as well as through our phone bridge and through social media using the hashtag AskNASA. Just a reminder for everyone dialed in on our phone bridge to press *1 to insert yourself into our question queue and *2 to take yourself back out. And with that, we'll go ahead and get started in the room. And we'll start with you. Yeah.
Thank you, Mark Carreau with Aviation Week and Space Technology. And my question is for Anne McClain. This was your second trip. I know they haven't been that far apart, but I'm interested in your thoughts about the structural status of the space station and the operation of the many, many systems that are inside of it. Did you feel like it's holding up okay to keep doing all the increasing amount of activity that's being assigned?
Yeah, and I appreciate that last part of your question there where you say increased amount of activity. We are hard on space station. We are doing a lot of experiments inside and outside of space station. And as you said, there's a lot of systems on the station, the communications and thermal and power generation. And if you think about, this is the 25th year of space station, which means the space station was designed 35 to 40 years ago with that type of technology. And so it is really a living space station that's constantly being upgraded. And that's why even though you might be thinking, okay, well, space station is due to end, 6-7 years from now. Why are we still doing spacewalks? Why are we still flying new gear up? Why are these cargo vehicles so important? And that's exactly why, is because we have to continually upgrade these systems. I have full confidence in the safety of the space station, both this mission and last mission. It was interesting to me to see some of the different systems and the upgrades that we've done. The rollout solar arrays were just an idea last time I flew, and then getting to go up there and actually see them out there. And it was pretty incredible, actually. But I do think that it's important that we continue to upgrade those systems because they have to work until the very last day of space station. They have to be absolutely safe. And that is definitely a non-zero effort.
Okay, next question. We'll go to Gina Sinceri.
Gina Sinceri, CBS News. Actually, this is for each of you. The research you did on space station, we're looking at long-term spaceflight, Moon, one day Mars. Tell me about the research that you each were doing that gets NASA to that point.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for the question. I think space medicine, any kind of space medicine research we are conducting on board the ISS will help us to get to further destination like the moon or Mars. For example, I participated in the Zero T2 experiment. So T2 is the name of a treadmill we have on board the ISS. So I didn't run for 5 months while I was there at all, and how my body responded to the gravity when I came home. So it's interesting go through some readaptation processes. So I think those data would be super beneficial for future crews.
Yeah, I love this question. I love to talk about the science that we get to do up there. And I think that it's important to note that all of the human science is actually volunteer. So TAK volunteered for that study, and we get to volunteer for everything. So we get briefed on the science and what will happen to our bodies and the different types of collections. And so, I volunteered for several different human science experiments that will help inform, how do we predict and how do we prevent bone loss and how do we keep the muscle structure, without the force of gravity. We're burning more calories just sitting here than we did working aboard the International Space Station because your muscles and bones are just not reacting to the force of gravity. So there's several different studies that we did on humans, but then also we got to participate in several different, over 200 types of experiments for plant research and medicine. One of my favorite ones that was one of the last ones that we got to participate in was a ring sheared drop. So looking at protein structures, how they shear at the water-air interface, and then how do we build computer models to help inform the manufacturing processes, both in space as we get further out into the universe, but then that also helps inform how we do manufacturing processes on Earth for medications that can help with Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, cancer, things like that. So it's pretty fascinating and pretty amazing that this science on board not only informs how we're going to do life further out into space, but it also helps how we do life here on Earth.
Okay, perfect. We're going to go ahead and pop over onto our phone bridge, starting with Manuel Mazzanti with Exploración Espacial.
Thank you so much. Manuel Mazzanti from Exploración Espacial, and thank you for sharing this time with us. A question for Anne McClain. Anne, we saw you wearing an EVA suit several days after you arrived, doing some exercises and training, how it would be for a crew to arrive to a future destination. How did you feel about it? And can you tell us more? Can you give us more details about those tests?
Yeah, I would love to talk about this. So what it's referring to is I was in the kind of exploration EMU, which is a kind of a walking version of our EMU, doing some tests, some physical exertion tests, and some kind of fine detailed tasks like connectors and things like that. I did it pre-flight and got all my scores, and they've tracked all my movements, my heart rate, and things like that, and then did it post-flight. And this kind of goes back to the last question too, of like what are we doing on space station to enable and inform us for future space flight. Part of it is like, what is our exercise protocol, and is it good enough so that when we land from somewhere, maybe not the moon, but maybe something that takes longer to get to, like Mars, how well is our body going to react? What is because like one of the big things on space station that we lose is our cardio fitness, and that's just because of blood volume and red blood cells going down. You get back and you're just like, man, I just got winded, like walking up a flight of stairs. But I thought a week ago on space station I was just crushing this workout. And so this getting back in the suit, I'll be honest, when I woke up that morning, I thought, I don't know how I'm going to get in the suit. Like I did 2 minutes on the bicycle yesterday and I was smoked. And so I got in the suit. And the very first thing we did was come down a ladder, almost just Apollo style, and I was offloaded to Martian gravity, and my heart rate just spiked. And I was thinking, man, how am I going to do the next task, which was these 20-pound sandbag carries back and forth for 5 minutes. But what was really interesting to me is when I started doing that, my heart rate kind of spiked. And then I felt like it really just kind of even keeled out. Like my body was like, okay, this is what we're doing. And it almost, I think, snapped me back into Earth fitness better than I did last flight when I kind of slowly ramped back. And so it was a really interesting test to me. I was in the suit again yesterday doing the same test a week later to kind of compare it. But those are the type of things that inform some of the things that you don't think about. You think about, okay, how am I going to pick up a rock sample off the surface of the moon? We're thinking about, can I get out of the suit by myself after I get in, like when I'm deconditioned? When we first get back from space, you saw us, we got put on stretchers, we got helped, we were kind of slowly got into that. But can I get out of a suit? Rear entry suit sounds great until you have to get out of it by yourself when you're deconditioned. So these are some of the data points that we were getting. I thought it was a really cool test, and I'll say the countermeasures that we have on space station, I think, were really effective for enabling my ability to do that. And I'm looking forward to more data as more crew members come back and do the same thing.
Okay, we're going to go over to social media now. Micah Tischler on X asked kind of a longer question. So I have a multi-part question. One, is it my imagination, or has photography become a more common activity on the ISS in recent years? Two, I've seen Anne McClain with a camera body labeled Anne, as well as Don Pettit referring to his cameras. So I find myself wondering the following. A, do those on orbit generally have camera bodies that are specific to them? And if so, do these camera bodies go up and down with them, or are there a number on board the station which are reassigned as needed?
You're a camera pro.
Yeah, I could take that one. I think that especially with social media and technology these days, I definitely think that photography is becoming more well known. Astronauts have been taking photographs for years, for decades. And, as the technology increases, we upgrade the cameras as we get on board. We have a certain number of Nikon Z9s on board that we use. And, we have a label printer up there, so each of us has a camera that's readily available for us. And then we have several other different types of cameras and different types of lenses that we can change out and use as required. So we didn't bring our own cameras up. We use the ones that are on board. And as Anne mentioned, the cargo vehicles, that's part of the manifest and how we manage cameras and photography for science and Earth observations and disaster relief. And so, that was, it's one of my favorite things to do up there. We were super fortunate. We had a month with Don Pettit, and he gave a great handover. I basically just followed Don around for about a month and took notes, and he was kind enough to teach me everything he knows about photography. And so he really helped me. And then as Don left, then the rest of us got really into photography as well. And so I think that just our ability to share all of that photography with the world has gotten better. And so I don't know that we're necessarily taking more pictures, but we're definitely sharing and telling the story of what we can see from the ISS. We have such a unique vantage point looking down on Earth and looking down on weather systems, the aurora, different thunderstorms, different types of natural disasters, landslides, fires, all sorts of things. And we can really help inform how we do disaster relief. We can help inform, how thunderstorms interact with the atmosphere just based on photography. And so, I felt a really deep sense of duty to just share our view with the world while we were up there. And I think that's innate in every single one of us, I think. And so there are plenty of cameras up there, plenty of lenses. Don Pettit did an amazing amount of work to get our photography to where it is, and then to share that knowledge that we can then pass on to future crews as well.
Okay, great. Anne, anything to add?
She nailed it. Yeah, I think photography was really fun, and I think it's one of the ways that we can communicate just how magic it is. I think everybody on Earth right now, when you can give them a perspective of where we are, the scale of where we are, both in how big our Earth is, but also how small it is and how we're really all in it together. I think if we can give people those moments, and I know we rely on media, like you all here, to tell that story, because I think that's an important story to tell. So if we can hand you the pictures, but if you guys can share those far and wide, it'd be great.
Definitely. Okay, before we hop back into our phone bridge, I just want to remind everyone who is dialed in to press *1 to jump into our question queue and *2 to take yourself back out. And with that, I will pass it over to Robert Perlman with Collect Space.
Hi, Rob Perlman with Collect Space. A request and a question. First, a number of our readers asked if there were any clear views of your zero-G indicator, the origami crane. If you took photos of Drew while on station, or if you can take photographs of it now on the ground, could you share those on social media? And then the question, sort of a follow-up to the last one, to Nichole, is about the Sprite, or rather the gigantic jet that you caught while photographing lightning storms. Was that something you saw happen live through the viewfinder, or was it while reviewing a time-lapse sequence? And if live, can you set the scene? Did you immediately recognize what you were seeing? Did you call over your other crewmates? What was that moment like?
Yeah, we definitely have pictures of Droog, so we will share that for sure. Yeah, I can't believe we haven't done that already. Yeah. So yeah, that's an easy one. Yes, of course we will do that. Droog spent the entire mission with us up there, and he kind of hung out in the lab with us, so you could float by him every day. And yeah, so this was just another technique and another skill that I learned from Don. You have to. Taking great pictures is about planning and timing and execution. And so, you get a feel for where the largest thunderstorms are, you do the research, and you kind of pay attention to weather systems. And so I knew that there was going to be a pretty big weather system in that area. I knew it was going to be a great pass over, Mexico and the U.S., and wanted to get some really great pictures at night. Nighttime photography became one of my favorite things, but then also the thunderstorms are the most brilliant there as well. So you have to pay attention to the weather systems, know where the higher likelihood of seeing the transient luminous events are, and then setting the camera up. So I set the camera up and started a time lapse, and then I think I had to go do like a science experiment or some other maintenance task that day. So I set an alarm on my iPad, ran over, got the time lapse all set up the way that I wanted it to, and then started it. And then later that day was reviewing the pictures. And we have a shared folder on board the International Space Station that we named Holy Wow. And I was like, I got a Holy Wow picture. And so actually the Axiom 4 crew was there as well. So there were 8 of us crowded around a laptop looking at this picture. And I knew it was a great picture, but I had no idea how phenomenal that picture was. I had caught a couple of sprites and a couple of blue jets and things like that. And, every time you're just more fascinated and more inspired to try to capture these things and really see how thunderstorms can interact with the atmosphere hundreds of kilometers above Earth. And again, it's a unique view that we only have. So I actually figured out that if you pay enough attention, you can play the time lapse back and you can kind of see a bright flash. And so that's kind of, that informs which of the 2,000 pictures the chunk of 2,000 pictures that I'm going to go look at and find the picture that caught the sprite. So it's something that you can't see with the naked eye. And so it's only in post-processing and review that you can actually find those pictures.
All right, we have another question in the room. Go ahead.
Richard T. with the Post newspaper. A question for all of you. Out of the myriad of experiments that you conducted, both technologically speaking and medical, which ones, I guess, maybe resonated the most with you and maybe was the most meaningful to each of you?
I'll jump in. I've talked about it before, but I think one of the really cool things was the protein crystals, and part of it was because my last mission, it was kind of early on determining whether we could grow protein crystals on orbit. And then if you fast forward 6 years, we are growing lots of protein crystals on orbit and bringing them back to scientists who can use it. And one of the researchers told me this has accelerated Parkinson's research by years. And Keytruda, the drug Keytruda, this was another beneficiary of it, the space station research. And, when you have friends and family who are impacted by cancer and they use Keytruda and you're going, holy cow, this would not have been possible 5 years ago. This treatment would not have been possible if you had been diagnosed 5 years ago. All of a sudden you get goosebumps and you're like, man, it's a really good thing that we have space station. So those two really stick out to me as pretty big underlines for the last 5 years.
Yeah, I think to piggyback on that, the ring shear drop experiment that I explained earlier has very similar effects and very similar positive influence on both Earth and as we venture out into the universe. Then one of the other ones resonated for me because my alma mater had a part in it. So the Air Force Academy was working with rhodium and looking at tomato plants and how they react under microgravity in different areas of radiation. So they actually flew on the FROM mission as well to see, higher up into the outside of the atmosphere what that radiation difference looks like on plants. And, it's also important to look at plants and food as we continue to grow our distance that we move away from the Earth. Resupply is going to be a huge problem that we have to solve along with food and water and reclamation. And so it's a small part of how we're going to get onto Mars eventually.
One of my favorite experiments is called the ELF, electrostatic levitation furnace. And there are 3 reasons I like it, because the first one is the Japanese experiment, and the second one is I majored in materials science in my university, And the third one is so my first flight was in 2016, and I worked on the first initial checkout of that experiment, and it's kind of still working, and it had a lot of minor or major updates. So it's upgraded until now, and so I was really looking forward to working on that experiment again this time. And it was such a cool experiment that we can levitate a sample by using an electrostatic force. So instead of building a furnace with a heavy metal, and we can use a laser to heat it up until like 2,000 or 3,000 degrees Celsius to get a characteristics data at such high temperature. So it was very, very cool experiment that could be super beneficial to produce any kind of new materials on the ground.
Okay, we have another question in the room.
Hi there. I'm James Dowling Healy, West Hartford Community Interactive. I'm wondering, after your time in space, what pieces of equipment you absolutely think we need on longer duration spaceflight, X-ray, ultrasound. I know we'd love to have an MRI, but I don't think it's anywhere near small enough. So anything that you think we should bring would be, I'd love to hear your insights on that.
My initial feedback is the exercise equipment, and it's a hard one because it takes up a lot of space, you know, and so when you have smaller spacecraft, having large exercise equipment is difficult. But as we go through the last week or week and a half, and I'm getting scans on my bones, and I'm getting scans on my muscle, and I've put on muscle, and I have not lost bones. This was not happening 23 years ago, 24 years ago when we first started flying long duration missions. And, you know, when I got in the suit last week and I didn't collapse into a pile on the ground, I actually picked up moon rocks. Like, we need to pick up moon rocks when we get to the moon. And so I think that the exercise countermeasures are absolutely critical for longer duration. And especially, I think we've really hit having the three that we have, the exercise bike, the treadmill where you can really weight yourself, and then the advanced resistive exercise device, ARED, where you can put more than your body weight onto your bones. That's really what keeps your bones strong. Your bones are only as strong as they need to be. And so I think those three are critical.
I would say the ability to manufacture. You know, we talked about the lack of cargo vehicles, right? The lack of ability to just resupply. And so I think that, you know, our ability to 3D print tools or to come up with new ideas or create things that we might find that we need when we get further away, I think that's going to be really crucial. Both, you know, we've had a biological 3D printer on board, but then also just metal or other substances as well.
I think network connectivity with Earth is very important in terms of psychological support for astronauts. The biggest difference between my two space flights is, I think, connectivity. So this time we have a lot of good connection on a kind of internet. So that made a huge difference on our psychological kind of wellness, and we can connect with our friends, our families all the time very easily. So going to the moon or Mars, it's going to be super challenging because we feel we are away from our home, our families, and that kind of connectivity will make our expedition much easier, I believe.
All right, jumping back into social media, Women in the Air on X asks, question for both Anne and Nichole: was your spacewalk the highlight of your mission? And Nichole, how did Anne help you on your first EVA?
Oh man, absolutely. You know, people ask me what my favorite day in space was, and I think the spacewalk day was that. It's an amazing show of teamwork and accomplishment. You know, we have an entire ground team that helped us prep. We prepped for over a month on board. Talk and Johnny were our IV crew members, so the ones who stayed inside, but they were the ones who got us suited up and out the door that morning. You know, our morning started at 6 a.m. when Anne and I are on oxygen masks, and Talk and Johnny were up before that, getting everything ready and making sure every single thing was ready to go. And so we went went into that spacewalk completely calm, cool, collected, and trusting that they were going to take care of everything. So we were able to focus once we got into the hatch or into the airlock and close the hatch, at noon that day. And so I think that then during the spacewalk, we had a few changes, and it was a pretty dynamic spacewalk in terms of the game plan and having to change the game plan real time. And it was a true testament to Deanna Trujillo, the flight director, and her team on how they were able to manage those changes, get us safely back inside, and also achieve all of the objectives that day. And then I think my favorite part of that whole day is when the hatch was closed and Tak grabbed me out and started to get me out of the suit, because it's a long day and you're tired and your crewmate's going to take care of you. And so I think, for sure that was the highlight of the mission for me, I think.
Yeah, and I think they asked about helping out. Nichole helped me, I think, just as much as I would have helped her. And that's the same as, when we're in the pool training for these, the same experience I had on the last EVAs. I think it's easy sometimes because years pass in between these major events and we think this person's an expert, or we've flown this vehicle, this vehicle's proven, and you go, actually, it's only flown 10 times. Or you must be an expert at spacewalking. Actually, I've only done it twice, and now 3 times. And so, and every spacewalk is different, and you encounter different challenges, and you're flying with and working with the most proficient people that you've worked with, and nobody shows up to spacewalk day going, oh yeah, I already have this figured out. It's actually like, hey, I'm gonna rely on you with my life and rely on you with my life, and you can rely on me, vice versa. And so each spacewalk day is pretty significant, but it's also, I think it really, to me, signifies in spaceflight, it's hard to become an expert. You have to do something a lot of different times in order to really be like, hey, I got this. And spaceflight is very humbling. The second you say, hey, I got this, it's gonna remind you that you don't have it all figured out.
Sorry, I'll just follow up on the second part of that. Anne is an amazing leader and an amazing human, and she provided a lot of advice ahead of time, but then also like the calm leadership out the door as well was impressive, right? And like I said, it was a pretty dynamic day, and I was never in a spot where I questioned what was going on, because we talked a lot, we prepped a lot together. You get a certain amount of time scheduled for you to prep, and then we prepped outside of that, and every astronaut's going to do that, but I walked into that spacewalk with whole confidence based on Anne's leadership. So,
incredible. Thank you both. Sue Moji on X asks if there's anything that y'all learned that you didn't expect to on station. Nichole as a first-time flyer, or for you, Anne and Tak as non-rookies?
I can go first. I think that it was fascinating to me to watch how our bodies adapt. And I think that, if we were on board the space station right now, I'd probably flip upside down just to prove the point, right? Because it became totally normal to talk to somebody on a wall, or float through a module and somebody's running on the wall or working out on the wall or upside down, hanging like a bat from the ceiling. And it takes a little while, but your brain starts to figure it out and remap those neural pathways, and everything just becomes normal and nominal. And it's pretty fascinating to watch how quickly the brain adapts to space. And then coming home, the first day trying to remember how to walk, like everything is heavy. And now 10 days later, we're all running, jogging, and mostly have our balance back, right? And it's amazing to watch the brain remember all of that again. And it completely ignored your vestibular system for 5 months, and then 10 days later, it's like, oh yeah, we can do this again. So it's been pretty fascinating to watch the body adapt.
So for me, being the commander of the Expedition 73 Part A was something completely new to me. I never had such an experience to command such an international team, so that was a great experience for me. I learned a lot through the experience. Each person has different sets of skills and also background, also cultural background. So it was super interesting to see those differences and being the commander of such an international team. So no matter where we are going in the future, it will be definitely an international effort. So I hope that experience helps me to get there when I get a chance to do that. So really appreciate that opportunity.
Yeah, and I think we all learned a lot from Tak's leadership style, the calm, confident. He really set the tone up on board, and I know that we're forever going to be thankful for that. One of the fun things that I was kind of reminded of on Space Station, we have a little bit of a culture in the way that we share information. And I always say, like, there's kind of something unique about living in a closed system where information flow it kind of makes me laugh. Somebody will just say, hey, and they'll give you some random piece of information. And in 5 days, that little piece of information, you're like, I need that information right now. And I would equate it to if I was driving into work today and I saw a divot in the road and I just walked over to you and I'm like, hey, there's a divot on the road on NASA Parkway. You'd be like, why are you telling me this? I'm probably not going to run into it. But up on Space Station, because it's a closed system, every little thing that happens to you, it's going to happen to somebody else also. And so you're constantly sharing this information. And I can't describe how cool it is to work with a group of people in an environment where everybody wakes up and trying to make not just themselves successful, but everybody else successful. And so as soon as you run into one of those little pieces of information, you pass it on. We're still talking to the crew on board right now because we're kind of making sure they get the rest of the handover. And I think information flows is pretty neat up there. And, we could do well on Earth to implement more of that, of just like, what do I know and who else needs to know this to make their life a little easier?
Okay. Next question is on our phone bridge from Orion Keton with NASA Spaceflight.
Hi, thanks for doing this. Fingers crossed all going well. In 6 months, 4 of your colleagues will be flying around the moon. I'm just wondering, first of all, what is it like to be able to serve with the agency during this kind of pivotal time period in human spaceflight? And was there anything you conducted on your expedition that is, in particular, going to be assisting Artemis II? Thank you.
Yeah, for me, working and getting to be part of this mission, be part of the NASA mission right now is absolutely special. And we've talked about it amongst our crew. We've talked about it with the teams. But NASA's mission we've done great things during times of history where the political situation or the world situation may dictate that maybe this isn't the best time to do things. But when you look back at those times, that's what you're proud to tell your grandkids. That's what we're proud of that time. When we think about the 60s, we think about the moon landing. And when you really put yourself in the shoes of somebody living through the 60s, was that the most important and most stressful thing that they woke up feeling every day? It wasn't. There's a lot going on. But our country and our international partners, we can do hard things and we can do multiple things at once. And, waking up and getting to be part of a mission where we believe in humanity. We believe in the goodness of international partnerships. We see people and we say, hey, what can you bring to the mission? And we look out there and we say, what else is out there? Let's go there together. Just that innate human desire to explore and to do something together. That's what we get to be part of. And it's like, this is something that we're going to be able to be proud to tell our grandkids that we were doing in 2025. And so I think it's a great time to be working with this agency.
Okay, jumping back into our social media questions, and then I also have one myself. John Wolf on Instagram asked, how do you feel to get back home? And out of my own curiosity, how did it feel to splash down in the Pacific Ocean rather than the Gulf?
So I think I don't think any of us have actually landed in the Atlantic or the Gulf, but Pacific Ocean, the landing felt okay, and then the waves felt much larger than they actually were. I think, at one point, I think it might have been Tak asked, like, are we in a tsunami right now? And I think all of us were like, yes, we are. It was a 3-foot wave, I think, is what we landed in. But it felt like, if you had asked me, I would have said 7. So I think that, again, just adapting back to gravity, the entire way back through the atmosphere, we could feel the acceleration at 0.01 Gs. Every single one of us could start to feel the acceleration. And, at 0.2 Gs, I could start to feel my cheeks moving backwards, right? And so it's pretty, again, just fascinating that how well we adapt. And then at 1 G going up to 4.4 Gs felt like a lot. And so, we lived, for some of us, 30 to 40, 50 years on Earth at 1 G, and coming back, it's pretty heavy. So I think that the waves just added a little bit to that. And then getting onto the ship, we're, like Anne said, we're decommissioned and just trying to move slowly through that and very quickly readapting back to life on Earth.
Yeah, I was really afraid of waves after splashdown, but it wasn't too bad. I was ready to grab my bags if needed, but luckily I didn't use it. So the splashdown is completely unique from my previous experience in Soyuz, but I enjoyed all single aspect of SpaceX Crew-10 return. It's more kind of everything happens more quickly and faster in a faster pace, but all systems worked as planned. So I thought all systems were super kind of reliable, and splashdown is as hard as the landing in the Soyuz, but it was also a fun experience. And each single event, like a parachute opening, splashdown, we are excited and we talked a lot inside the capsule. Yeah, so we enjoyed it.
Yeah, we have 4 pilots that enjoy that kind of thing. The only thing I have to add is spot on for both of them. The only thing I'll add is one of the things that spaceflight does is that you really start to rely on your visual system for balance and orientation more than your vestibular system. In fact, your body kind of starts ignoring your vestibular cues to the point where when we get back, if we stand on one foot, tends to not be super challenging if your eyes are open. The minute you close your eyes, you're over on the side. And so when we land, the windows are charred, and I hadn't really thought about that. But when I was thinking about landing in the waves, and everything, we're all strapped down, so there's nothing there's nothing staying on the horizon that we can see, and so we're completely reliant on the the vestibular system to kind of sense where we are at that point. And it was a little bit more. It was a little more unsure of our exact orientation than I thought I might be at that point, but it was still fun.
Okay, Morgan on Instagram asks, what advice would you give to our younger generations who have dreams to go to space?
I got it. I'll do it. Man, I love to say, as long as you're willing to work hard and be a good team player, you can get anywhere in life. And so, find the things that fascinate you, find the things that you enjoy. I loved math growing up. And, as you heard, we've got scientists and engineers and doctors. And so find whatever you like to do and go get really good at it. Be willing to work really hard and be a good team player. Find a bunch of people that you love, take care of them, and you can really get anywhere you want in life.
Okay, I believe we have one final question here in the room with Mark. You go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Mark Carreau with Aviation Week and Space Technology. I believe some of the research that you were conducting was focused on cell generation, but also manufacturing tissues, human potentially. And I just wonder if any of you have any thoughts looking to the future, whether there could be a capability to custom make organs for transplant using space labs.
Yeah, so I don't know that any of us have the in-depth knowledge that our NASA scientists would have to be able to answer that question, but I think even in just seeing the technology gains in the 5 years between my first and second flights has really opened my eyes to when we can get commercial companies involved in low Earth orbit. I don't think we can even comprehend the advances that they're going to make, because the creativity that they bring, even watching the private astronaut missions up there that just brought in things that maybe we hadn't thought of, or companies that kind of had access to space that didn't, and countries that had access to space that didn't before. I think it's going to be jaw-dropping, and I think that's one of the reasons why the mission of NASA to enable commercial spaceflight is so critical. It's maybe kind of like having kids. You enable it, and then you just see what happens. And I think that I think commercial companies are going to be really interesting to watch over the next 10 years and what they bring to low Earth orbit.
Yep, well said. One more question actually in the room with Gina.
So an interesting statistic about the space station, Reed Weissman dropped last year at a Space Day event, that more than 1,100 tortillas were eaten in 2024 in the space station. The last cargo mission brought up, I think they said 630 tortillas. Mike Barrett last week just started laughing when I asked him how good was a tortilla in space. He says you play Frisbee with them. So how versatile is a tortilla? And you're eating it breakfast, lunch, and dinner?
Everybody's a little different, but yeah, we're all laughing because we definitely have had taco nights, and it's your bread source, and it's also just a really easy way to put juicy food inside of them. It's nice to be able to hold something, but yeah, I think we've made breakfast tacos. We've been pretty creative with them. What are some fun things that we saw?
Yeah, we did quite a few tacos. The other things, crumbs, right? Crackers and other things are really crummy, and crumbs in space just get everywhere. And so tortillas are a really easy vehicle to use as well. So I think that's part of why we use so many tortillas up there. But man, I'm sad we missed the opportunity to throw them like frisbees.
We didn't play frisbee.
Yeah.
I don't think we'd want to eat them afterwards. We can't wash our hands very well up there. So I don't know if I want everybody's hands on a tortilla we're going to eat. Yeah. But I think we kept them as edible.
Okay, well, on that note, I believe that will conclude today's post-flight news conference. Before we do go, though, I do want to extend a huge thank you to our crew for joining us here today, and I just want to extend a huge welcome home to all of you. We're so glad to have you back here. To read more about Crew-10's mission at length, or to see what our other Expedition 73 members are doing currently on the orbiting laboratory, you can visit the Space Station blog on nasa.gov. And with that, for a final time, go Crew-10, go Expedition 73, and we'll see you all next time.